if anyone has any questions, it's going to be more of a conversation. And I'm just going to tell you a bit of a story of why I'm here, what I've come to talk about. It's my passion, which is heritage craft textile. It's something that I've spent most of my life pursuing and in love with. So I'm just going to share with you about that. I think we're in a very interesting moment in human history, as in many times it happens, right? Human beings have everyone believes that progress happens in a straight line, but it rarely does. Progress actually are quantum leaps that happen at specific points when something, a technology or some discovery of something, makes things change overnight. And sometimes that change is painful. Most times there is pain involved. But they are huge leaps of progress. Whether it was, when man discovered or invented fire, whichever way you want to look at it, or the wheel, or the printing press. Life goes on for a while like this. Sometimes it even goes backwards. But then there's these moments of history when life just goes boom, and there's huge change. And it's a moment of struggle and strife. And I think we're in that very moment right now. If you think about it, we are living an incredible revolution, technologically speaking. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, words that we hear, we don't really know what they mean, but we actually use them on every single day. Every time everyone posts something on social media or even goes onto Google, you're using an AI algorithm. You are being manipulated to click on something. And most of us don't even understand what it is. And it is such a powerful technology that it could actually lead to our best time of peace or our worst times of strife. Why? Because it's very fast. It's faster than it's ever been. The spread of this technology in the old times, whether it was fire, whether it was the wheel, whether it was the printing press, sometimes it took decades for the technology to actually spread around the world. But today we're talking about months, sometimes days, for things to spread across the world. There are no boundaries. So I think in this very moment that we're living, which is so exciting in many ways, right? Because if you were to look back on time, human beings are in the most amazing situation that they've ever been. If someone would have woke up a 15th century, human was suddenly to come alive, this would be utopia. There's food everywhere, there's water everywhere, the temperature can be controlled, they can do pretty much whatever they want, there's freedom. So it's kind of the closest, experience of utopia they would have described it as. But at the same time, here we are, people who live today, and what are we watching? Dystopic versions, Black Mirror, the Handmaid's Tale. Most of the literature, most of the popular culture is giving us a very dystopic view of what could happen, which is not a bad thing because it's their job to warn us in time, as art is supposed to do, and let us know, hey, watch out, this is what could happen. But it also, in many ways, makes most of us as human beings exhausted, frustrated, feeling like we cannot do much, feeling like, oh, you know what, it's beyond me. I really can't do much. It's done, it's over, Google owns the world, Facebook, my privacy is not my problem. So it also, in many ways, is a way to indoctrinate for change not to happen, which is very dangerous because change is happening, without doubt. And the question is, will the change happen the way a few handful of people want it to happen, or would it happen for everyone? And I'm, by nature, a positive, utopic thinker. I'd like to believe that human beings have always or will always be able to write our history and change it, that we are free beings, even though computers want to control us. And you can see that with all the revolutions that are happening around the world, right? When you see the Arab Spring, or even what happened in Chile, and that spreads around the world, there is still this beautiful element of human beings that we connect with stories around the world, that we even in spite of something that might be good for us, we're willing to sacrifice for this idea of freedom and love and bigger things that people don't even are intangibles. So from my point of view, I feel like when I live with somebody who works in this world of AI and machine learning, and I see and hear and not understand all of it, but I do see and hear how fast it's changing everything. And I'm by heart, and I've always been an arts and crafts girl. I've worked in craft all my life. I've traveled around the world. I've been lucky enough. I'm one of the few lucky people on this planet who actually does what they love. It was an accident. I found it, and I'm just so lucky I do it every day of my life. It's not always easy, but it's beautiful, and it gives me energy to carry on doing it. And at the same time, as I am that way, I did also live in the last 15 years a big threat to what I love. So I come from, I don't like to call it the fashion industry because it sounds very elitist and different. I like to call it the clothing industry. Because the truth is, every single one of us, when I use the word fashion, a lot of people tell me, I'm not interested in fashion. I'm just, that's not my thing. And I look at them and I'm going, you're not naked, so you're definitely interested in fashion. People don't understand that every single day when you wear clothes, you make a statement. You decide to tell the world. It's a very powerful communication tool, the way we dress. Because we tell someone who looks at us from a distance what we want them to think we are. Sometimes when we're sad, we might wear bright colors. In fact, it's been studied, during World War, women were wearing bright red lipstick. That sales went up because you wanted positivity. You wanted to sell that. You wanted to appear happy. So fashion is really connected with how we are, who we are, what do we want to talk about, and it also talks a lot about what's happening in society at any given moment. And I've felt that in the last 15 years, stuff that I love, stuff that I'm crazy about, which is heritage craft, which tells you a story, is disappearing because industrialization, fast fashion, this voracious appetite for cheap has completely destroyed it all over the world. My parents are from India, so I was lucky enough to actually have lived many years, gone back there, holidays, and have lots of connections, where even in the last 15 years, even in places like India or China, when I get there, what I get to see is there's a Zara here and there's a Louis Vuitton there. They all look like airport aisles. I don't find the amazing markets that I used to walk into. And, travel for me was a beautiful experience. I know exactly where I got this skirt. And I remember the trip. And no longer can I say that many times, because when I travel, when I don't have a lot of time, I have access to just about the same that I would have online or any big airport around the world. And that's kind of heartbreaking, because I know there's still a lot of struggling craftspeople around the world. And at the same time, can I go now? We're living in this world where you've got really complex supply chains, right? We buy clothes, we really don't know where they come from. Yeah, you can see a label. Yes, you can see the name of maybe the shop you bought it at. If you're, interested in fashion enough, you might even know the name of the designer. But that's about it. We don't know. And those are elements that are really a tiny part of the story. Because the real part of the story is the people who grow the cotton or the silk, who spin, who weave, who cut, who sew. And all of that story is lost. And in the end, the only value we put to what we buy is the brand label, or it's, how much it costs, which is a really sad way of valuing things, right? Of course, I'm not going to tell you all the environmental problems that, this has caused in our industry. You can go look it up. There's a great movie called True Cost, which can tell you how, there's a big argument going on in our industry about whether we are the second or the fifth most contaminated industry. I couldn't care less. We are contaminating enough for it to be a huge problem, and we need to solve it. So, what's happened in this last 15 years especially is that fast and cheaper seems to be the success story. When even I listen to my friends in Harvard universities, they talk about casos de éxito, and it's what? Zara, Inditex, H&M. Casos de éxito is not Edric Ong, who's sitting there, who's spent his large part of his life reviving craft in his little area in Malaysia. That, to me, is a caso de éxito, which is not the way we look at it, which is not what studies are done, because we value success in a very different way. We want to know how many cars Edric has. Does he come out in the Forbes most wealthiest men in the world list? And he doesn't. So he's not considered to be a hero for anyone to follow. So that's sort of where I felt that maybe we need to look at this very interesting juncture of society where we've been valuing things coming from an industrial revolution, valuing everything with quantity. Maybe it's time to go back and value things with quality. Could we actually make that shift? In our industry, you have a lot of product around. Everyone says, oh my God, it's the democratization of fashion. Everyone can dress really well. Isn't it great? Even poor people can dress well. And that's a lie. Because in reality, people are not dressing well. They're just dressing with a lot of things that they don't last them a long time and satiate the moment of buying, but then after 3 washes look like crap and you're back to buying again. If one was to actually study the amount of money each one of us spent on clothes, it's a lot more than our grandmothers did. And our clothing lasts a lot less, and it's a lot less valuable. It's not well made. At the same time, people who I admired as a designer, Alexander McQueen, you name it, lots of them, you saw that, and I would have loved to have those jobs. Imagine having an atelier at Dior at your disposal to do whatever you wanted. And you saw stories of them being depressive, alcoholic, quitting their jobs, committing suicide. And it's like, how can it be? People who have the best jobs in the world were not happy? Why is that happening? And then, of course, because I've traveled around the world, I've lived in Europe for the last 15, 20 years. And what I saw in Europe was factories in Europe were shutting down. And of course, when I go to the Far East, because I have family there and I still travel there, I saw, yes, factories were abundant. But what was missing was the lack of rights. So there was no work where we were, and there were no rights where work was. So when you were to think of the Industrial Revolution and all the fights of the labor trade unions to try to get us I don't know how many hours you work here, but in Europe it's an 8-hour to a 40-hour work week, a weekends off. Those struggles took many decades for us to get. And it turns out that they're only for the privileged few. And those privileged few today can't even get jobs. In Europe, we have a huge problem of young people being very highly unemployed because of the way the structure of society is right now. And then you go on to the Far East, and you have lots of jobs, but those jobs are working in inhuman conditions. 7 to 14, 7 hours is nothing, 12, sometimes to 14 hours a day of work, and no rights, and women working where they literally have to sleep under the machines. I'm not even going to talk about child labor, which is, of course, why not? And so what have we done really? What do we do in the first world? We exported what we didn't want. We don't want to work hard. We don't want to work those. So we just exported that hard work off to another area, into another part of the world that we can't see. And on top of it, we sold ourselves this beautiful story that, we're helping the third world. Oh God, thank God we're buying cheap clothes and the Bangladeshi people have something to eat. We forget, because we haven't read. In Europe, especially in America, our history lessons are very poor, and we forget how rich those cultures were. We forget how rich Argentina was 150 years ago, or how rich China and India were, superpowers before colonialism took over and turned it around. So it's a false story being told, and because I, with my background, straddle 2 cultures, I have the wonderful experience of being able to look at it from both sides. This is something that is very controversial, because whenever I give talks, I get thrown at, a lot of people get lost in numbers. I always say, you want to confuse people, throw numbers at them. Because, there's always somebody who'll come up with another number. But the sad part of the story is, this is the honest truth. Clothing industry affects pretty much every industry that we know of. It affects agriculture, because most of clothing comes from agriculture, animal husbandry, polyester and petrol, because most of the clothes we wear today are nylon, acetate. They all come from fossil fuels. The traveling of the clothing from one part to the other. Today, when you buy a T-shirt that's $5, it's actually probably cotton grown in America, subsidized by the American government, shipped over to China to turn into yarn, shipped over to Bangladesh to spin, cut, sewn, put into a boat or a flight, flown over to somewhere else, and sold to you at the price of less than a sandwich. And you wonder why people don't think about that, no? Why don't you think, whoa, how can my T-shirt cost less than a sandwich? So many processes were involved in this. I'm buying it at the most expensive retail neighborhood. How is it possible that it's so cheap? I also like to show this one, because everyone looks at that and goes, that's, Campos de Tulipanes. No, those are not tulips. Those are thrown away bikes. So the new story of sustainability is being told. Many people are being told, we don't going to own clothes anymore. We're just going to rent them. That's cheap. It's better for the world. People are just going to rent clothes.
that is such, excuse my French, bullshit. Because this is what happens when people start renting bikes in China. When I lived in China when I was growing up, people had their own bike, and trust me, they took care of that bike because their livelihood depended upon that bike. They would have to go to work with it every day. They took really good care of it. And it was that one bike which was their investment. Now, the Chinese government, about 10 years ago, started a project in one of the cities where they allowed for, bikes to be rented. This is what happened. It's not mine anymore. I don't care. It breaks. Who cares? We are not guests on this planet. This is our home. There's no one else who's going to come and clean up. This is not Airbnb. We better watch out, and we better stop thinking about this as a renting economy. I know for some tech people, it's a great story to tell, and it's a great unicorn to sell, because, they'll become billionaires and they'll tell you this is the way to solve the world's problem. Let me tell you, it isn't. We need to own less, and we need to take really good care of it. This is an issue that I'm sure you guys have heard about, especially in Mexico. This is a perfect example. A brand called Isabel Marant, I'm actually even familiar with her very well, copied an embroidery from a community in Mexico. And of course, they didn't even bother to make it with the community. It was probably made in Italy or China, depending on the price point, sold with the story. But the community never got to even see anything, any profit, or even the real story to be told. It's amazing how we protect intellectual property rights at an individual level or even at the company level, right? You have GMOs that today are being protected by laws that are stronger than being protected in individuals, whereas communities who've been doing work for centuries, for generations, it's who they are, can be copied easily and no one cares, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. I'll give you an example. When we're holding an event right now in Casa Pedregal. Johan is one of my partners there. We're 4 of us. And the event is very much about what I'm talking today. How can we have people understand what heritage textile is? Even in Mexico, which is a country that I think is very rich in general, people are very aware. I find Mexicans to be very aware of their culture and very proud. And I always give Mexico as an example of how even young people are very proud of their culture. Even here, when I talk about the caracol panza púrpura, not a lot of people know about it. Not a lot of people know that there's a color that is the most sustainable dye in the world, because there is a community that has made it their business to actually do something really nearly dangerous, but in a very sustainable way, because that is their heritage. They go to the ocean, pick up a snail, and take it out of the water, put it onto the skeins of cotton. The la baba, the slime from the snail, dyes the color. They pick the stain up and put it back into the ocean to go back and milk the snail again in another 21 days when the full moon comes out. I mean, there is no story that could be real sustainability when you think about human beings and animals living in perfect unison of understanding that we're not using them, we're together and we're building something together. Most people don't know about it, and there's only about 20 young people in that community that still do it. They're now barely making enough to make, a handful of huipiles, it's a dying art. People who make it are very much older people now. So those are the stories that I feel that we need to think about. That culture and tradition is not something that we can just be inspired by, but we need to invest in it. So the idea was, how can we do this? How can we, stop this monster that we've become, us individuals? We are, irresponsible. We want. We know all our rights. We've forgotten all our responsibilities. Everyone knows what their rights are. No one talks about their responsibilities. I think maybe it's time that we need to write the human bill of responsibilities, the human, universal human rights. Maybe now it's time that as a society we should think about what is our responsibility as a species, that we are destroying our planet, and what is it that we should be doing. And this is what I kind of come at, and I sort of threw that question to myself and went, okay, well, in reality, I want to be different. I've never wanted to dress like anyone else. I've always wanted to stand out. I think there's no two women or men who like looking like someone else at a party. I'm sure you go into a party and someone's wearing the same exact clothes as you. That kind of bothers you, unless you're twins and you think it's funny. So why is it that we don't want to do that today when we get dressed? Why is it that we're willing to give up our individuality just to be part of a look, a herd, a sheep? We've been brainwashed to believe that our differences are not something to be celebrated. And then, of course, there's this incredible looming vision of what the future would be like, with robotics, with machine learning. The truth is, and I don't care whether you look at it from a positive point of view or a negative, there is going to be very little work for human beings to do soon enough. Most of the work will get done by robots. And this work, to be quite honest, which is fantastic that the robots do it. Who wants to clean toilets? Who wants to go into a mine and comb, do things that are dangerous and drudgery? I think there's no human who wants to do that, who should do that. Maybe human beings should be allowed, and this new society that we're building, I'd like to think positively and say, we're going to have a lot of time. What are we going to do with that time? Are we going to be creative? Maybe that's what we really meant to be. Maybe we could be a creative. That would be the industry that would grow the most. And I always looked at life, like I said, in a positive way. I found this poster about 15 years ago on a website that talks a lot about the future. I'm a bit of a science fiction geek, and I've read, the Foundation series, and I'm always interested in, I think we're in this very interesting moment, and I felt that I needed to do something. I wanted to get involved. I don't know nothing about math. I was really bad at it. I don't really understand most of technology. I'm a bit of a Luddite. I always get locked out of my passwords. So how was I going to participate in this incredible moment that we're living? And I thought, you know what? The truth is the future belongs to those of us who are willing to get our hands dirty. And I definitely was willing to get my hands dirty. And I came up with this idea, which I call the IOU Project. And the idea was, could we use technology to create awareness and to actually connect the human beings? What do we do there? We felt we were coming from a time where work was equal to quantity. So work was drudgery. You measured work by the amount of time you spent at it. That's how you sold your time. And we were going into a new society where work was going to be about quality. If you have a programmer, it doesn't matter how many programs he spits out. If they're no good, he's no good. It's the guy who makes a really good algorithm who gets paid most. So maybe we have to go back to quality, and we have an opportunity that quality can be really valuable. And also, we're living in a very interesting time. These are studies that I was shared by friends of mine who work in consumer research, and they were kind of looking at it very similar to the ideas that I was having, that maybe this new generation that was born, that was completely connected online, would be interested in a completely different narrative. That they were very interested in what was happening, where things were coming from. To them, a brand wasn't just a brand. They considered themselves to be the brand. They were the brand, and they were the brand value that was added to the old-fashioned brands. So I think that's a very interesting shift again. And could we do something about it? So what we did was we came up with this idea. We thought, what if we use this technology and humanize the product? What if you knew the name of the person who made your jacket, who actually put all the embroidery on it? Your relationship with the jacket changes completely. Now it's no longer a piece you bought and when you're tired of it, you could throw it away or give it away. Now it's somebody whose work you own, and that makes it a human connection. And I think at the end of the day, human beings, we're storytellers. When you think about it, every time you meet someone, you talk about a story. Hey, I met so-and-so, this is what's happening. That's how we relate to each other. So that's an interesting thought that I think we could go back to that storytelling and those connections. So what we did was, we went back to heritage craft. And why heritage craft? I feel like at this time that we're at, we need to really examine, before we move forward, take a break, take a deep breath, and see, where do we come from? Who are we? Where are we rushing to? Is this thing that we're being offered, this shiny golden thing, is this what we really want? So that sort of, this moment of reflection, especially for the younger generation, is really important, because they've been born into this accelerated world where if you're not on social media, if you don't have likes, they're talking that the amount of depression in young people is growing dramatically, because their life is being valued by amount of likes you get, amount of followers you have. So it's creating an anxiety in us as human beings, making us lose our sense of north. And maybe it's a moment that we pause before we take this quantum leap and go, okay, is this really the direction I want to go in? So we started working with communities. This is Harris Tweed from the Isle of Harris. I traveled there, very much like Juan Valdez is how I felt. This is a small island in the middle of nowhere in Scotland where they still weave by hand. And the amazing story is that 130 years ago, there was a government movement that allowed for the community to get together and own the Harris Tweed mark. Only people who wove by hand in their houses could use the Harris Tweed label. What did that do? That allowed that no big industry could come and own it, that it was still owned by the community that lived there, and at the same time allowed for the individual to flourish. And then, but of course, that's a lot of people would say, oh, that's very cool, it's a small community, it's Europe, it's very expensive, that's not scalable. Because every time I've done projects, and I've worked in craft projects all my life, one of the things that most people or naysayers throw at me is that, oh, that's very nice, very cute, but can't be scaled. Oh, that's not a problem to solving the problems of the world. We need GMO, we need industrialized clothing for everybody, because everyone can't afford this. So I decided to go back to India. And I started the project in a little area, which nobody even knows it now, because the name's been changed, called Madras, India. Madras was an area where the British first actually started, when they got into the British Empire, started there. And it's one of the most ancient areas of weaving in the world. In fact, they say that India and Africa had tradition of textile exchange way before the colonialists got there. You can actually go to many African areas where you'd find the Madras check being worn, and this is way before the colonialists got there. So textile's always been a way in which we've traded around the world. So I started there because it's one of the oldest cooperatives in the world. Mahatma Gandhi started the cooperative in 1910 or 1920. And the amazing part is 250,000 weavers are part of that cooperative. So no one could tell me this was not scalable. So I went there, I worked with that cooperative, and we decided to put 253 master craftspeople online to show the world these were the individuals who were weaving. It was a crazy idea. It took a lot of time and money. And since I'm a little bit crazy, I decided why not. I took all my savings, because no one believed in the idea, and put it into it and spent 6 months living in South India, documenting 253 master weavers and putting them online. After which I took the fabric and took it to Europe and made the jackets. Many people ask me, why don't you make it in India? They make great clothes in India. Well, that wasn't the idea of the project. The idea of the project was, we as human beings, we've been global traders from very long ago. Marco Polo did not go to China to buy the cheapest stuff from China. He went to China to get the most beautiful things of China and exchange it with the most beautiful things of Europe. We've always traded, as cultures, our treasures with other treasures. But today, as cultures, we go out to find the cheapest crap. We go out to find slave labor. So when you think about it, look, what are we doing? We're destroying culture there. We're destroying culture here, just so that a handful of people can become wealthy and a whole bunch of people can just be bloated and sick. So what we did is we developed an open source platform where every piece had a code. You could scan it, and with that code, you got to see this. You got to see the weaver who had woven your piece, which was very important to me because these people who were anonymous till now were actually visible. We gave them authorship, which they had never had. When you think about it, even young people today, most people go to design school thinking they're going to become Alexander McQueen, and let's be honest, very few do. Most will end up working at a Gap or whatever, folding t-shirts or trying to figure out a way to make a living, because it's not easy, the industry. But they still want to do it. Why? Because, in fashion, as a designer, you're celebrated. Your name comes out. Everyone knows, oh, you're a designer. How cool is that? Even if you don't make any money. Whereas if you're an artisan, it's not cool. Being an artisan, even an artisan themselves, doesn't look upon themselves as cool. So how could we turn that around? And we felt authorship was a very important part of this. We had to give them authorship. So what you could see on the IOU platform was, if you bought a shirt, you could see who the weaver was, you could see who the craftsman who bought the shirt, who made the shirt in Europe was. So I went to the best factory who made jackets. Why? Because, as a designer, when I go to Italy to a jacket factory, he will make it better than I designed it because he wears the jacket. He knows how to make a jacket. That's his tradition. Just like the Indian will make me the best cloth because they wear cloth. They don't wear jackets. They can copy a jacket. Yeah, they're good at it, but they will not, it's not their culture. I really wanted to use clothing as culture and mix those two things, and that's what we did. And we then sold it online, and my idea was to sort of create the J. Crew with a soul, to put a product out there that was not too expensive, but at the same time had huge value for the consumer who bought it. We wanted to create this virtuous circle, right? This circle with that was virtuous because both sides won. The consumer won this incredibly valuable knowledge that they were actually buying someone's work, and the person whose work it was being acknowledged for their work, which is a really important part of us as human beings. We like to be acknowledged. And when I started IOU, people would ask me, oh, is it a brand? And I was like, no, I don't want to make a brand of clothing. That really wasn't an interest. I'd already done that. What I was trying to do was build a storytelling platform. I wanted to take this platform and share it with the luxury companies, who I thought would be the first, people who would love to tell their story. And guess what? I was wrong. The luxury companies were not at all interested. I spent 2 years traveling all over the world, knocking doors with my friends from Gucci, from all the big brands. Hey, guys, look what we're doing. Do you want to hop on? We want, other brands to be on top. And they're like, I don't want people to know who my artisan is. It was such a feudalistic attitude that it shocked me. I couldn't believe the paternalistic attitude they had towards the artisan. It is as if the artisan belonged to them. It was shocking for me, honestly. I was, a little heartbroken. And then I spent another couple of years making my own brand and said, you know what? If they don't want to listen to me, I'll do it myself. I'm very stubborn. So I went out there, made my clothing, sold it online, and I started a hashtag in the year 2010, which was, Who Made My Clothes? Of course, the Rana Plaza hadn't happened. I had already run out of all my money because doing all that, I'm telling you, takes a lot of money. And I had no money left to do marketing. And when they tell you, many times they say, oh, open a website. Everyone tells you as if, you open an e-commerce and people are going to come rushing to it. And that's not true. When you open e-commerce, you pretty much open a shop in Timbuktu. You have to spend a lot of money to build the road to your shop, paying Google, Facebook, Instagram, all of those people so that people can get to your store. So I realized that I was facing the same problems that I faced on real physical retail on e-commerce as well. That for people to listen to me, I'd have to spend a lot of money. But you know what? At the same time, there's this magical thing called the internet. So I spent 2 months of my time writing emails and to people that I thought were interesting, that could be interested in this project. I barely slept. I wrote to Oprah Winfrey, to a little girl in Seattle, 12 years old, who was running an eco website. And I just wrote the letter telling them, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'd love for you to help me spread the word. Could you talk about it? I've got a 3-minute video. Do we have time for it? Okay. Do you have the sound? Is it possible? Anyway, you guys should check it out online if you can. Just go IOU Project introduction video. I have it in Spanish and in English. It's really quite special because as a brand, we decided we do not want to communicate the way other brands do. We did not want to have a model wearing clothes looking cool. We were going to write and make people read. Everyone told me it was a bad idea. They told me, oh my God, no one looks at a video of 3 minutes. It cannot be more than a minute. Everyone told me, no one reads anymore. I was like, I'm going to make people read and it's going to be 3 minutes. And it was the most magical thing that happened. And this is what was the first publication that came out about IOU, which is every single piece is unique. We don't make any piece the same because the weaver who weaves 8 meters of fabric. I never tell them what to weave. They decide what they have to weave. I just take it and apply it to a design that I think it works. So it's a perfect tandem of respect both ways. Internet is magical. I got so many responses from that email. Oprah Winfrey wrote back. The girl from Seattle wrote back. I spent 3 months giving interviews, traveling, talking about it, and soon enough, IOU was everywhere. We won awards. The website was working. To this day, I'm proud to say I have not spent a single cent on advertising. I've decided I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way, word of mouth. If you like me, you talk about me to your friends, and then they'll buy it. So it's a community-based word-of-mouth advertising. I'm not going to tell you it's easy. It took me a long time. When I went online, the idea was so good, I thought, oh my God, this is such a great idea. I made 5,000 pieces and put them online. Waiting. It took me 2 years to sell those 5,000 pieces. It wasn't easy, but it happened. And from that, a lot of magical things happened, and I realized that what I was saying was reverberating. There was a lot of other people doing work as I was doing in different parts of the world. You know what's also magical about the internet? Before, when you were a crazy person and you lived in a village, you'd probably get shut into some place or be medicated and declared crazy. But today, you can connect with crazy people around the world and make your own crazy village. That's what's magical about the internet. No longer are you dependent upon your geographical location. You can actually connect with people around the world, and that's what happened with IOU. We met these boys from Outcomes First. They're actually exhibiting here. They've got a beautiful exhibit here. Do things that are different, and said, hey, you guys want to collaborate? Maybe we can make this stronger. And so I did a collaboration with these guys who are very well known. I'm not at all into Instagram. They were super Instagrammers. So that gave us, open new markets for us. We started selling in Japan. They also learned a lot about handloom weaving that they had no idea about. It was enriching. It wasn't the H&M version of lambon, which is basically taking beautiful lambon design and making it in a cheap, shitty way. It was real collaboration. We enriched each other. The product was better because both of us were involved. This is what my collection looks like. A lot of people think it's all about, when you think of craft, it's like very folksy and, very hippie. I think it's very modern. A lot of, it's unisex, it's genderless. A lot of people can wear it. It's very much about today. It talks, every single piece that you see there, it has a story. It's worked with a community that I still work with. The first piece is a Harris tweed piece. The second one is alpaca from Peru. Then in the middle is India. And then the last piece, the jacket he's wearing, is a hand-knitted jacket from a community in Spain, which does the transhumancia. It's merino wool from the shepherds directly. Then I also once I started that, I realized a lot of the heritage communities were actually using synthetic dyes. Because, their dyeing forms, because they were struggle and to sell at a cheap price point, a lot of the chemical companies had gone in and given them cheaper dyes to try to make their product cheaper. So even though yes, it's true, they were doing craft, they were doing heritage craft, but their dyeing methods were horribly polluting. And it was really affecting the local communities. And most of them had forgotten how to do natural dyes. So I did a natural dyeing project with a really good friend of mine who's at TEXTO, if you guys come, Jesus Ceriza, who's a crazy guy from Spain, who moved to India, to Oroville, and is one of the most important master dyers in the indigo world and natural dye colors. What I'm wearing, for example, is completely natural dye. And this is a 20-year-old skirt. And natural dye ages beautifully. So I did that. And, basically the dream was not to build a brand. I never wanted to do that. I'd already done it. The dream was to build a Wikipedia of artisans. Why? Because I feel that we're at a moment in history that a lot of the craft is in the hands of people from the age of 60 to 85 or 90. And these are people who most of them have learned their craft by word of mouth, by watching the maestro, and by doing the work. There's no documentation for this. So if these people die, this craft will die with them. So we're at this, just like the world WWG is trying to save wildlife is trying to save extinct species, I thought we needed to save these species of, cultural remnants that's there, that if we don't learn, if we don't have the second generation learning them, we're going to lose them forever, and they're going to be pieces in a museum. And that's kind of what we intend to do with this. We intend to elevate traditional craft to where it should be, where it becomes important. I remember when I was living in San Francisco over 20 years ago, everyone used to be talking about, artisanal bread. And when I traveled to Delhi or to even Europe, when I talked about it, they thought I was crazy. It was like, what is that? Today in Madrid, I don't know how many artisanal coffee, artisanal bread shops. Friends of mine who were burnt out in the publicity industry have left jobs as great publicists and opened their little own bread shop where they make their own bread. So if that's happened, why would it not happen in clothing? And I said, what would stop it? If we are going to these coffee shops and having special coffee and special bread, why would we not want to do that with clothing, right? And that's sort of what we decided to do. We started to document and collect information. The first one is Donald from Harris Tweed. That's, I'm never able to say her name properly. Vanilla from Madras, and Jesus, who you can meet if you come to TEXTO. It was about giving them authorship for their work and about making them into equals and not treating them as someone I was trying to help. One of the biggest things I'm against, and I always talk about, is when you're in this world, everyone says, oh, my brand helps artisans. I find that really offensive. We're nobody to help anyone. Artisans don't need help. They need respect. That is what we need to do. We don't need to do this. We need to do this. We need to treat them as equals, pay the right price for their product as we would do anywhere else. No one is going to walk into a Chanel shop and bargain. Why would we bargain with an artisan? And so that's what we did, and we wanted to tell these stories about where things come from, the denomination of origin. Just like in wine in the last 20 years, it's become so important where the wine is from. Agriculture is the same thing. There's so many different kinds of cotton. Cotton has exactly or maybe more varieties as a grape. So if we know, you would never buy a bottle of Rioja made in China, would you? Then why would you buy cashmere made in China? Kashmir is a place. It's in North India. Part of it is now in Pakistan, and a little bit of it is in, it belongs to Nepal, and it's broken up. And it's a very specific region. And that goat is from that region. Why are we willing to buy a cashmere made in China? It seems like we don't even know that there was a place called Kashmir. The same thing happened with Madras. And the same story over and over again for many textiles, where people just use the word, but they don't know where it comes from. And that's kind of what we work in our project. It's all about documenting denomination of origin. For us, that's really, really important. Here's a really good example. When I go and talk about this, people say, oh, it's such a utopic idea. I don't know if you can do this. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest hotel company in the world doesn't own a single hotel or a room. It's called Airbnb. The biggest transportation company doesn't even own a single car. It's called Uber. The biggest media company doesn't even make media. You make media for them. It's called Facebook. Why could not we build the biggest textile company in the world by using the same platform idea? Could we not build a platform where, whether as an individual or as a brand or as a company, you could buy textiles directly from the weavers? Or you could hire designers like me or like Edric who know how to work with those weavers to develop something for you and make sure that you have full traceability and transparency in the process. This is a great thing I like to show everyone, and the reason why we're doing TEXTO. When I first heard the story, it really shocked me. Do you know this photograph of the McDonald's chips? This was taken back in the 50s when McDonald's franchise started to travel around the world. So some big shot in the Mad Men, scene from some big Madison Avenue firm decided that's what the chips had to look like. Now, don't forget, it's an American company. All the potatoes were coming from Idaho, and it's a very specific potato called the russet potato from Idaho, which is that white, large potato. And when you cut it up, it gives you chips like that. But potatoes around the world don't look like that. They look like that. They're in different colors, different sizes. So what did McDonald's do when they traveled? They didn't go and take the local potato. They actually exported the Idaho potato, and pushed into farms in these countries to grow that potato. Now, of course, nature is so much wiser. There was a lot of pesticide problems because those potatoes it wasn't their natural habitat. So what did they do? Instead of listening to nature, they decided to, get together with technology, as they call it, with Roundup, with Monsanto, and created a pesticide, a GMO version of the potato, which, today, when you guys eat a McDonald's potato, how it gets made? If you're anywhere in the world and you're having that potato, basically the farmer, in the last 5 days before they pull it out, cannot even go into the farm. It's so toxic with what they throw into it. When they take it out of the ground, they have to leave it in a warehouse for 2 weeks for the chemicals to disappear from it before they're even enough for human consumption. So I've spoken to farmers who grow this, and they've actually told me this story. So just because you want something to look like something, we as human beings are stupid enough to go against nature and think that, we could do better. Yesterday night, we had at TEXTO, Dr. Vandana Shiva, who's one of my heroes, talk about this, and she said something really cool. She said, I don't call them GMO, genetically modified organisms. I call them GMO, God move over. Because that's what we're doing as human beings. We're saying, what? Nature doesn't know. I know better. We're so powerful. We're like these, 16-year-olds just gotten our driver's license and driving recklessly. We think we know where we're going. So what we started to do is we created this project called Extant. And extant means still surviving. And the idea with extant was documenting all of these incredible, and putting them onto this Wikipedia of artisans. And the first step for extant is what we're doing now at TEXTO. Can you go to the website, please? So I'm here to invite you all, if you're here in Mexico City for the next few days, to come by to see this beautiful home built by Luis Barragan, which we're so lucky to have as a venue. And can you go to the first page? There you go. And we've gathered 45 master weavers, craftspeople, activists from 23 different countries who've brought with them the most incredible textiles. So you can touch, feel, try, if you want, buy these pieces and be inspired by the diversity and richness of our cultures and dream about what humanity could be like. Maybe humanity could be beautifully dressed in the future. Thank you. If anyone has a question, I'm happy to answer. That was good, huh? No questions. But yeah, sure, please. You yourself know how to weave? No, I don't know how to weave. I learned how to spin because my grandfather was part of the movement in India, the independence movement with Mahatma Gandhi. And at that time, he was a young lawyer. And he learned how to spin because one of the things that Gandhi told everyone to do in India was to get the spinning wheel. And he said if you would make your own clothes, that was a way to get rid of colonialism. So my grandfather, who had actually studied in England, came back and learned how to spin. So I got his spinning wheel so I can sort of spin. But no, I'm not a good weaver, but I work with some of the best weavers in the world. Sorry?
Where is the textile event you mentioned?
It's happening at the Casa Pedregal, which is in the southern part, very close to the Museum of Frida Kahlo. It's called Jardines de Pedregal. The house is called Casa Pedregal. It was built by Luis Barragan. Not only just for the textile, but the house is beautiful. It's honestly, it's open to public. You can come. There's a small fee to enter because we're self-funded. And what we're trying to do with this event is we've gotten some really good. Thankfully from the Secretary of Culture of Mexico, who've been kind enough to pay for tickets for some of our, people to come from very far. Edric's here from Malaysia. We have people from Indonesia, from Japan, from Ethiopia, from Uzbekistan. It's magical. It's sort of like the United Nations. I would really, like I said, don't buy. Just come and touch and see and feel. Sorry? What are the hours? The hours are from 11 to 7:45. And we have a lot of talks, and you can enjoy a lot of, these people are going to come and share what their experiences. No, Saturday is the last day. Saturday we close early at 4, so it's through Saturday. But then we have a small little section we were given here by Mako, which is, I think it's D, I don't remember the number, in the design area. It's called TEXTO. It's got a big painting on it, which one of our artists did the other day, where you can touch and feel some of it. But it's a very small example. I mean, it cannot represent what we have there. I would really, really encourage you. I mean, it's like traveling to so many places at the same time. I think so, D32, thank you. It's the booth D32. But I mean, honestly, it's like such a small representation that I feel like it's not enough.
Hi, I want to thank you for coming here and just, you share so much excitement for this, and I think it's very needed in the world. About the kind of Wikipedia project that you've got going on, how can we collaborate, or be part of it? Because I'm working in something with artisans as well, and I agree with you. I think they have, we need to know their name, and I worked in the government in I'm gonna name it because Funart, yes. And you weren't they're supposed to help the artisans, and you don't get to know who made the pieces, and nothing
I'm going to say something politically incorrect, but since I'm a foreigner, maybe I can get away with it. Most of the government agencies have a patriarchal attitude towards craft, or most things, because it comes from, I'm going to give you. It comes from this gesture. And they actually create dependency. They actually create, I honestly don't know. I think that's such a wrong way to look at craft. Craft is a business. It's one of the biggest businesses. It was 150 years ago. It was the biggest business in the world. That's how we all dressed. It's how we shared our cultures. So I think the way forward really is with us. Well, how can you help as an individual? I urge you not to buy fast fashion. Yes, through the project.
Wikipedia.
Yes, I mean, it's a lifelong project. I'm very aware of how ambitious it is. I'm also very aware that I probably will not finish it in my lifetime, which is fine with me. And that it's utopic and it's idealistic, and it's I get told that every day. And that I'm, it's never going to happen.
No,
I don't care. That's the decision I made. And we're building the platform. TEXTO is the first encuentro. We did not want to be like most people in this world of development, whether you're Bill Gates or whoever, with this philanthropic attitude of, I'll tell you how I'm going to solve the world's problems. I honestly don't know. And I think the world's problems, the weavers know how to solve them. So we got them together to listen to them, to hear their stories, to find out what is it that they need before we start building this. We don't want a top-down approach. We want a bottom-up approach. So TEXTO not only is there to educate and to give an experiential retail to general public, but it's also to create this dialogue. When I talk to Edric, he tells me about things that he's frustrated with or he needs help with, and maybe I can figure out a way to help him and he can do vice versa. And imagine 45 of us, they could grow to 150 to 2,000 to, the domino effect, and that's what's going to make change happen. So that's kind of one of the things that we want to do. Come, listen to us, share with us your point of view. We want to do more of these events, and we want to hear from this to build a platform to then everyone can use it. And it's going to be open source. It's going to be for everyone. I keep using the word Wikipedia. I remember I was in San Francisco 2 years ago, and I was giving a talk about this, and I immediately got pulled into a room, and there was, I'm not going to name them, there's a big venture capital fund who told me, oh, that's a brilliant idea. It could be like the Facebook or the LinkedIn of the future. We're going to do this, that, we can get you money to do this. He said, and then you have, what's your 5-year, plan? Who do you want to sell it to? I was like, I don't want to do that. I want this to be the Wikipedia. He's like, what's your business model? Maybe we can do advertising. We're like, no. This is the Wikipedia of artisans. Everyone tells me that the most important companies in the world are Google and Facebook. I disagree. One of the most important companies in the world is the Wikipedia. When I travel to very remote areas of the world, There are so many people who have no access to a library get their information from a Wikipedia. And that's free, and it's because many, many, many people put their time for free and make sure it's edited and the information. Is it perfect? No, it isn't. But it's an amazing tool for people who have no access to information. So that's what we want to do. We want it to be open source, and we want it to belong to everybody. So the first step we're doing here at TEXTO, we're having a conversation. We want to build a guild of artisans, where we are ourselves protectors and beholders of the future.